What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into this edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. What's the latest on James Franklin? Who wants to win the ACC in football? And Neoklis Avdalas has arrived. All that and much more coming up on this edition of Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we're recording on Wednesday, November 12th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And as always, we are joined by the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. Teel, as always, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, guys.
Good to see you. Good to see you. We got to start with James Franklin, as always. I don't know how much of an update there is.
As always.
If there is one on your end, can you kind of share it? Where do we stand in this current process? And do you still expect him to potentially be the next head football coach at Virginia Tech?
Oh, I certainly think he's still in the mix, Carter. No, I don't have any grand revelations for you. I thought that the College Game Day podcast this week put it well. I think it was Reese Davis, not Pete Thamel, who said it's the worst kept secret on the coaching carousel as to where Virginia Tech is trying to get with this search. The question becomes whether the Hokies can get there or some other suitors might come into play, staring at you, Tallahassee.
So, Teel, tell us, what are your real estate sources in Blacksburg telling you? What are your catering sources in Blacksburg telling you right now? I think a couple of weeks ago we said, hey, this would be way too early if it happens in October. That's unprecedented. That's never happened. We're 2 weeks later. Everybody's been on pins and needles about this. Would this still be too early at this point? Is this still trying to push the envelope of when a coaching search can actually wrap up?
I don't think it would be too early for either party, really, if James Franklin is convinced this is the place for him. I mean, surely Virginia Tech and the search committee have done their due diligence on the people they would be interested in speaking with. And it seems that they have settled on James Franklin as their primary target. And if so, I wouldn't blame them for wanting to get a deal done. It's just a matter of whether Franklin and Jimmy Sexton want to take themselves off the market. My sense is no, that that's not good for business.
Ironic then that the Hokies travel to Tallahassee this weekend. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the most Virginia Tech thing.
Yes, it would
is
be.
The Hokies beat Florida State, thus prompting Florida State to fire Mike Norvell, and then all of a sudden they're into the coaching search, and they go, well, perhaps it costs you your coach down the line. That Virginia Tech fans would be celebrating the victory and then hitting themselves in the forehead at the same time about that.
Yeah, but Andy, is Florida State really going to decide Mike Norvell's fate based on Saturday at Doak Campbell? I mean, Florida State's done some dumb crap over the last decade, but that would be among the dumbest.
I mean, you just said it, though. No, these rational Florida State boosters would never do this. A home loss against an interim coaching staff nearing the end of the season when perhaps you'd make a decision anyway, and feeling the pressure to try to make a decision when, hey, there are coaches out there, we got to get on this right away. Yeah, I think it could spur on action like that.
Oh no, I think a loss would, but certainly not a win saving. I was thinking the opposite. If the Noles beat the Hokies, oh, we're good. We don't need to fire Florida State or Mike Norvell. We're going to give that little nugget to Jimmy Sexton and James Franklin, tell them, no, we're not in this cycle. And that might prompt them to say, okay, well, then maybe this job's not going to open and we can move on with Virginia Tech.
Yeah. I was just thinking from the perspective of if Virginia Tech were to pull the upset down there. then
Yeah.
yes, I think Rome is burning at that point in Tallahassee, and they
Agree.
be spurred into action on that.
So if Virginia Tech were to hire James Franklin, let's just say today, for hypothetical reasons, what do the next couple weeks look like for him? Not to get ahead of ourselves, but what do the next couple weeks look like from a staffing standpoint, recruiting standpoint,
Sounds like you want us to
retention
get ahead of
standpoint?
ourselves.
I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. What does the next couple weeks look like from a staffing, retention, recruiting standpoint when you're looking forward to next season, when there's still 3 weeks left to go in the 2025 season?
Oh, well, the 2025 season would become very quickly irrelevant if it's not already. And yes, the regular season finale in Charlottesville, where the Hokies could potentially spoil a UVA appearance in the ACC championship game, would certainly be front of mind for maybe 7 days. But yes, recruiting, high school with National Signing Day approaching next month, forming your staff. Yes, it would be all hands on deck and a very, very rapid transition. What was when Brent Pry took over? Wasn't he stationed upstairs at Lane Stadium while the staff was, the current staff was getting ready for the bowl?
Yeah.
And
Well, that's how Fuente did it too.
yeah,
Because
so
Frank was finishing up his time.
Yep, you'd have a war room set up in the uppers of Lane Stadium, and they get to work.
I'm curious, Franklin right now, is he untethered to his school? Can he do more recruiting wise, honestly, than if he were a coach at an actual school and there'd be rules that apply to him? I mean, he can just go, he's a citizen right now, right?
Yeah.
He can go talk to anybody he wants to. There's no restrictions on that stuff. It feels like maybe he could be more effective untethered right now.
Hey,
I don't
Coach
know, just a
Joseph,
thought.
come on down.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
That's if these players are enticed enough by a coach who's uncommitted to a school at this point. Now, who knows what he's telling them about stuff? It sounds like he's had conversations with recruits, at least what some of these recruits have told these recruiting sites. But it's just sort of an interesting dynamic. It's like as soon as you get to a school, all of a sudden you're bound by recruiting rules and all that stuff. But he's not an NCAA coach right now. He doesn't have to follow that stuff. Just thought it was interesting.
No,
it's a question.
It's very interesting and gives him essentially free reign. And if he's smart, and you know that he is, I mean, James Franklin made his bones as a recruiter, so you know that he is not going to leave any loophole unexplored.
I do find it interesting. I read something the other day, doing some research on him, that he got his kind of recruiting start when he was at Maryland under Ralph Friedgen, kind of as the recruiting coordinator. I mean, this is a guy who's had, I mean, that was early 2000s. This is a guy who has 20 years of ties to this area. You talk about him as a recruiter. I feel like, in terms of assembling a staff, kind of what Carter just alluded to, what these first couple of weeks look like, it's figuring out how you're going to attack the area, the 6-hour radius, as Brent Pry talked about, just kind of the footprint as far as he knows exactly what it takes to recruit this area of the country, whether at Vanderbilt, at Maryland, at Penn State. I feel like that's kind of the first thing you attack.
Yeah, David, you look at the great players that he recruited to Penn State. They are from the DMV and Pennsylvania and that corridor. The Saquon Barkleys of the world and all those greats that have come out of there. I mean, he's come down in here in the 757 and got really good players. And it is without question his wheelhouse where he and his staff have all kinds of connections.
We talked about it a little bit last week, and we were mentioning the potential openings across college football. And we just talked about Florida State. And last week I mentioned, could Arkansas open, or Arkansas is open, could Arkansas play into the James Franklin market? I think Arkansas fans are hoping that's the case. I don't know if I really see James Franklin at Arkansas. I think there are two reasons to that. I know there's the SEC, but to your point, Andy, I think the fit at Virginia Tech is better. And I would argue that Virginia Tech's job is better than Arkansas's on the national landscape throughout college football, because of course you can come to the ACC and you can win instantaneously and get to the college football playoff. I don't know if that's necessarily the case at Arkansas. Is Auburn really a player for James Franklin? Because I don't think Florida and LSU are. Wisconsin is not even opening now, Andy. So Wisconsin.
Thanks for reminding me
exactly.
of that, Carter.
So we don't even have to worry about Wisconsin being a player. The one that does concern me is Florida State. And I'm not sure that Florida State is going to open. But if Florida State does open, I could see why they would make a play for James Franklin. If Florida State opens, Teel, and I don't mean to go back to an earlier point, but could you see the Seminoles having interest in bringing him to Tallahassee?
Yes. Oh, absolutely I could. And guys, not to rub salt in Andy's Wisconsin wounds.
But you're going to when you preface
Oh,
it like
yes,
that.
I am. But Wisconsin and Florida State strike me as absolute polar opposite situations. Chris McIntosh, the AD at Wisconsin, has acknowledged that institutionally and the athletic department have not provided Luke Fickell with enough support to secure the roster necessary to compete in the Big Ten. Hence, poor results. Guys, Mike Norvell has no such excuse at Florida State. He's had plenty of success in the portal and witnessed the 13-0 squad that ran through the ACC and should have been in the college football playoff in 2023. But what's his excuse the last two seasons when, what are they, 2-14 in their last 16 ACC games? That is inexcusable in Tallahassee. So to me, it seems that Wisconsin at least had some rationale in retaining Luke Fickell. And Luke Fickell has done it at a very high level before. I mean, he got Cincinnati into the 4-team playoff. Mike Norvell had one great season at Florida State. Now, he did yeoman's work at Memphis, but that's not at the Power 4 level. And, these last 2 years have been brutal. So to me, barring the Noles winning out, which is possible. You got the Hokies, you got NC State, you got the Gators. But if that doesn't happen, I think Florida State is open.
Teel, you brought it up last week a little bit. We mentioned all these connections to Maryland that James Franklin has. Maryland has lost 5 straight games. Pretty ugly. At Illinois this week, I can't imagine they're favored in that game. Michigan the week after that, Michigan State to close. They could probably win that one. How firm of ground is Mike Locksley on? And if that job comes open, James Franklin has stated, hey, I want to win a national championship. I don't know if you go to Maryland, if that's what you want to say. Some people might say that about Virginia Tech, though.
Yeah.
Do you think that could complicate things if that came open?
Andy, I think it potentially could. And I think there's a good chance that the job will open. New athletic director at Maryland with no ties to Mike Locksley. And last week in particular, I think, losing to Rutgers, that's a really bad look, and it wasn't terribly competitive. Now, they do have a very good freshman quarterback in Malik Washington, but that's no reason to retain a coach and his staff. Now, is James Franklin going to be interested in an institution after having worked at Penn State, where he was one of the top 3 resourced programs in a power conference? Is he going to be interested in returning to Maryland, where he's not going to be remotely close to a top 3 resource program? Now, could Maryland have the same resources as Virginia Tech if it put its mind to it? Yes, but Virginia Tech's resources would compare so much more favorably with its ACC peers as opposed to Maryland's with its Big Ten peers. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and also I don't think Maryland would be paying eight figures potentially. I think Virginia Tech could get there with Franklin. I'd be surprised if Maryland could put together that kind of package, just based on how much they care about football relative to basketball and other things up there.
Agreed. And we've talked about it before. Eight figures just strikes me as excessive. There are other candidates out there. This should not be a James Franklin or bust search. The fans may look at it that way, but that is certainly not where the pragmatist in me would suggest that the Hokies lean.
What do you make of the ACC right now? Not to shy away from the James Franklin discussion, but you're sitting here thinking over the weekend, okay, maybe we're going to finally reach some stability over the next couple of weeks.
No.
And then Louisville loses to Cal and Virginia loses to Wake. So what do you make of the ACC right now? And you mentioned us the other day, there's a potential of a 7-way tie in the league. How could that possibly work? And I know you've done more research than probably all of us have. Can you kind of explain some of these tiebreaker scenarios? Because clearly we're going to find ourselves in that situation here over the next couple of weeks.
You would think, Carter, there's a really good chance of some ties being needed or being needed to be resolved, to reach the ACC championship game. A 7-way tie at 6-2 is completely plausible because really all it requires is Louisville and Miami would have to win out, and then the 5 teams with one loss would have to take another. And you can certainly see Pitt taking that loss to Miami, Virginia losing to either Duke or the Hokies, Duke losing to either Virginia or NC State or Wake or Carolina. Georgia Tech loses to Pitt. There's a lot of different ways it could fall. I think a more likely situation is you have a 3-way tie at 7-1 between the Pitt Georgia Tech winner, the Virginia Tech or the Virginia Duke winner, and SMU. And Georgia Tech is the one team that absolutely controls its destiny. If the Jackets beat BC and Pitt, the Jackets are going to the ACC championship game. Virginia and Duke are in pretty good shape. If they win out and finish 7-1, the tiebreaker, which then becomes the combined conference record of all your conference opponents, that's what tiebreaker would come down to. It favors those two teams at this present moment.
Complex.
What are we doing? What are we doing with these tiebreakers? This is ridiculous. Is it going to come down to like a coin flip eventually? Like these schedules are so different. I'm putting the idea out there again. ACC semifinals and then a finals. Use that 9th week as the semifinal week. Everybody who's not in it, pair up. Schedule one odd team out to be the designated survivor, and then you can play, I don't know, schedule a random team out there, Charlotte or something like that. There, you go get your bonus win at the end of the year. This league is too big, and these schedules are too different to actually think that you can just pick 2 at the end of the year and go, these are the 2 best teams that we're putting forward to play. I think it's going to be a sham one of these years. I don't know if it'll be this year, but the potential is there that it's not going to be the best 2 teams that you put forward. And it might be, we're looking at it right now. And, this kind of, for some reason, this stuck in my craw last night when I saw the college football playoff bracket. I didn't see it live because I still don't have ESPN. Thank you
to YouTube
TV for that disaster of a situation. But I saw it online, and they showed, here's the college football bracket. And they're like, the number 11 seed, Miami. And I'm like, what? Miami is in 7th place in the ACC. What are you placing them in there for? So, I mean, it's just the team with the best ranking in the ACC right now is ranked in 7th place. And it's like, well, because the schedule that they've played, or why is that the case? Like, it just bothers me that the best ACC teams maybe aren't being pushed to the top in this whole thing or have the potential to play in the championship game. I think they need a solution to that.
Andy, here is the absolute worst case scenario for the ACC. Duke is sitting there tied in the loss column with the other 4 teams at 1 loss. Duke is 5-4 guys. That was an ugly loss at UConn on Saturday. Duke could win the ACC at 9-4 or even at 8-5, because if there is a 7-way tie at 6-2, which would make Duke 6-2, 8-5, that tiebreaker skews heavily to Louisville and Duke. Duke could conceivably win the ACC championship with 5 losses, in which case the ACC could miss the playoff completely, because 2 G5 champions, the American and James Madison in the Sun Belt, would then have a very good chance of being ranked ahead of the ACC champion. And that would be a permanent scar on the conference.
Do you think the committee would do that, though? If Duke won the ACC championship, and they're going to have to win some games, some pretty good games along the finish line to get to that point, even if they take another loss and somehow sneak into that. I mean, you look at the committee and how they rank these Group of 5 teams. South Florida is 24th. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is not even in the rankings, so we don't even really know what they think of JMU and all those other schools like that. Duke's going to be behind both of those conference champs, you think, potentially?
Andy, I think it's quite possible, because remember, Tulane could win the American. Okay? Tulane boat raced Duke.
That's a good point.
So if Tulane wins the American, there's no question that the Green Wave would be ranked ahead of an ACC champion in Duke. The question would become the Sun Belt, and whether a 12-1 James Madison, with a very poor strength of schedule metric, as Mac Rose, the Baylor athletic director, alluded to when I asked him about the Dukes last night. For any Virginia Tech fans, by the way, who are hoping that if James Franklin falls through, or they prefer Bob Chesney, last night was a good night, because the road for JMU to the playoff looks pretty perilous. And that would mean that Bob Chesney would be available a little bit sooner than he might have been.
One thing just to note, you mentioned it, if JMU wins the Sun Belt, and then they have to be a comparison. JMU lost to Louisville. And in the scenario you've outlined, Duke would have to go through Louisville and beat them to win the ACC. So all of a sudden, if you're comparing those two schools head to head, I know lots of losses, but man, the committee just does not respect the Group of 5 team, or Group of 6. I guess it's Group of 6 now, isn't it? How they define it, but they just do not rank those schools high. So I'm skeptical of the ACC champ could miss this thing. I think maybe 1% chance, but 99% chance I think the ACC champ is in. And I wish they'd reflect that on the graphic when they show it. I mean, at least put Georgia Tech in there. They're tied for first right now. Miami's in 7th place. Don't put them in as though they're going to be the ACC champ on the projection.
Well, they put them in the bracket, Andy, because Miami is ranked ahead of Georgia Tech by the CFP, which is a change from last week. So because Georgia Tech happened to be idle and Miami beat a terrible Stanford team at home, you're all of a sudden leapfrogging Miami over Georgia Tech. That made no sense to me.
Yeah, but it's just not they're not applying the rules to the bracket. I mean, they have to put in 5 champions right now. And Miami wouldn't be considered a champion or even a projected champion at that point. So I just nitpicking on my part. It just bothered me. I just wanted to get on the record about that.
Well, Teel, I think it just makes it the game you're going to this weekend even more paramount. Virginia at Duke. I mean, and this is a UVA team now coming off of what I thought was an ugly loss to Wake Forest. I know Andy probably couldn't watch it, but
I pulled up an illegal stream and I watched the whole thing.
But
screw you, ESPN and YouTube TV. You're both children. Get this thing ironed out.
I mean, Virginia had been the only undefeated team in the league all season and trips up against Wake, and it's got a really good Duke team that, yes, just stumbled to UConn, but a really good Duke team at home coming up, and Virginia Tech just kind of played Louisville close the other week. So it's an interesting schedule left for UVA.
It is, David. And quick to point out that Chandler Morris missed the last 2.5 quarters of the Wake Forest game. But truth be told, the Virginia offense was terrible with Chandler Morris on the field Saturday night. And for UVA to, and I know Wake Forest is good defensively. They were terrible the week before in Tallahassee. But Wake Forest has been, for the most part, quite salty defensively this season. But for the Cavaliers to fail to score a touchdown on Saturday night was a really bad look. Now, will Chandler Morris be ready this week? Tony Elliott said yesterday that he was hopeful that Morris could return to practice today. He's in concussion protocol. He took kind of two-weight, Morris slid, two-weight guys hit him high, and kind of simultaneous blows there. And he was down on the field for a while. The good news for Virginia is Duke is terrible defensively. I mean, guys, Duke gave up 45 points to Clemson. Now, I know the Blue Devils won the game, but Duke ranks, I believe it's 98th in total defense and similarly in scoring defense. That's not what you expect from an Andy Diaz squad.
So if you guys had to pick right now, again, tiebreaker scenarios, don't know, but we do got to keep the theme going. Who's playing in the ACC title game? Does anybody want to? Like, what an awful day for the league with UVA losing at home and Louisville losing to Cal at home. Who's playing in the ACC title game?
Bad loss for Louisville. I've been down on Miller Moss all season. He just doesn't do much for me. If you give him a clean pocket, everything's great. But the minute he has to move his feet, it doesn't look good. And I know Louisville had injury issues. Isaac Brown did not play against Cal, but they ran the ball fine. And then they couldn't close the deal. So you got Virginia sitting there 3-0 in overtime. Louisville's 0-2 in overtime, both at home, by the way, to UVA and now Cal. Carter, you asked me who's going to be in the title game. I think Virginia is going to make it. I think Virginia is going to beat Duke on Saturday and the Hokies Thanksgiving weekend. And I think they'll play Georgia Tech because Georgia Tech is absolutely going to beat BC this weekend. And then follow up with a home win over Pitt coming off the Notre Dame game, where apparently Pat Narduzzi doesn't care if they give up 100.
Yeah, that was a crazy quote.
Yeah, I'm with you with Georgia Tech.
Okay.
I like their schedule. I like the way they play. I like their quarterback situation. I'm not sold on UVA. Touchdown underdog this week against Duke. I know they played Duke historically pretty well. Then you could flip it around and say they don't play Virginia Tech historically very well the next week. So I think they slip up one time along there. I think SMU gets in.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
I was going to mention
They're
SMU.
like the least talked about. I mean, shoot, they went undefeated in the league until the championship game last year. And, 5-1, haven't even given up 100 points in league play yet. They get Louisville at home, and then who do they close with?
Go to Cal.
Cal. Yeah.
Wild card Cal. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we're just not talking about SMU. It's a really strong team. Last week, I feel like I could take a victory lap on the Miller Moss thing because I'm like, he's going to cost them a game at some point. I said that several times on the record. Go listen to some of our podcasts there. And now, SMU gets Louisville at home. I think win-win, they could get in. I don't know how a tiebreaker would work between 7-1 Virginia, 7-1 SMU if it was just head-to-head there. Obviously, they have not played, so I don't know what the.
But it would be you're talking about a three-way tie at 7-1.
I guess it would be if Georgia Tech was in at 7-1 as well.
Yes, that would favor Virginia.
Okay. Well,
okay.
I think Virginia loses before the end.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to get in there. That's my reason.
Then there's going to be no tie. You wouldn't need a tiebreaker. You just have two 7-1 teams.
Yeah, I think that's my prediction here. The two 7-1 teams, Georgia Tech against SMU. Now, I mean, we could play the game. How does the ACC cannibalize itself this week?
Exactly.
What's going to happen? I mean, we said like, well, Miami, they could win out. It's like they get NC State. NC State is the ultimate chaos agent in this whole thing. They just come in. It's like, we're 14-point underdogs. That's what we play our best. Here we go. 10.5-point favorites against an interim coach in Virginia Tech. They're going to stink up the joint and lose. That's just That's the law of the wolf. That's what Joe Giglio says?
Yes.
The law of the wolf. I mean, beware this week, Miami. There's a lot of forces at play, whether it's the NC State thing, the ACC thing. I would not feel too comfortable in that game if I were the Hurricanes.
And let's also remember that SMU's only conference loss was about as fluky as it. Have you guys seen the video of the last second field goal?
Yeah.
You can't get it over the bar by less than I got it over. No. I thought he missed it.
I thought he missed it too.
Because it hit the standard behind. That's hard to do, to make a field goal and hit the standard behind the goalpost there. Yeah, no, it was crazy. And think of SMU's bad luck on last second field goals. I mean, the ACC championship game last year. That thing's going to overtime until Hauser, bangs that thing in from 56 at the buzzer. Just crazy.
Yeah, I would love to see Pitt Pitt's got a tough road with Notre Dame, although Narduzzi doesn't care about it, and Georgia Tech and Miami to end the year. But seeing Pitt in the ACC title game with what it's had to go through would be good. I'm kind of with Andy. I was thinking Georgia Tech and SMU. But that SMU Louisville game, SMU's off this week and then has Louisville next week. That could be a really, really interesting showdown. I still think the ball's in Virginia's court. Virginia and Georgia Tech are the two front runners, and the ball's kind of in their court. But, if Duke messed around and did something crazy this weekend, then the door is open for chaos.
I was going to go Georgia Tech SMU too, and I thought I was going to be different. Because you're right. I think Virginia...
I beat you to the punch on that one.
I know. Yeah. Maybe I'm hating on it. I just think Virginia is going to trip up at some point. There's 2 games left. So to your point, the schedule's getting thin, but Hokies history, and I don't think they're going to beat Duke this weekend. I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, they scored 6 points last week against Wake Forest. I understand the quarterback situation, but like Teel said, they were struggling offensively before that. They haven't looked like the same team that they were earlier in the year. And even if Morris is out there, is he fully healthy?
Yeah.
At this point?
But this is a Duke team that just gave up 37 to UConn.
UConn is all right. UConn is not terrible. Yeah, that's the best compliment I can give them at this point. I don't want to go to Jim Moore's head here on anything like that, but they're not like what they were a couple of years ago. So
they have more ACC wins the last 2 years than Florida State does.
A lot of teams do, to be fair. Like 60 teams do at this point. What do we make of Narduzzi's comments? Is he just lost the plot? What is he thinking, saying?
Well, it is, as you and I talked about in our text, it was not a great question to begin with. Is the Notre Dame game a must-win? Well, of course it's not. Right. A must-win for what? So I think it was a poor question and a flippant answer that probably could have been a little more thoughtful from Coach Narduzzi. And I'm sure when he goes on the game day set Saturday, he's going to get asked about it. I imagine, though, that his remarks aside, he will have his team quite amped for this game. And, man, what a solid the Panthers could do for the conference as a whole, because that would knock Notre Dame out of playoff consideration. And maybe, we just talked about the slim chance of the ACC missing the college football playoff altogether. If Notre Dame were to be out, then, if Georgia Tech were to beat Georgia, or if Miami were to win out, could one of those two slide in as an at-large? There's all kinds of permutations out there.
I'll go on record and say that I don't think Pitt's going to beat Notre Dame, and I don't think Georgia Tech's going to beat Georgia. The ACC is going to be a one-bid league.
Okay.
I feel fairly confident. I feel like the odds are on my side for that whole thing. History.
Root for chaos.
Chaos.
There's chaos within the ACC. There's never chaos when the ACC has to go out of its own conference, though.
And Andy, your point is quite well taken. And now twice in as many weeks, the selection committee chairman, Mack Rhodes, has mentioned the AC, and he hasn't used this word, but what we can because it's true. He has mentioned the ACC's miserable non-conference performance this season, and that really Miami's victory over Notre Dame is about it.
Hold up now. They're really memory holing. Florida State boat race to Alabama in the opener.
True.
Everybody has forgotten about that result. And like, I think you look at some of the analytics and like this week, the SP Plus has Florida State favored by like 18 over Virginia Tech. And like, I think the analytics don't know what to do with that result because it was so long ago.
Yeah.
But like that's why people hate the SEC in this whole selection process. Like, well, the ACC doesn't really have any wins. Oh, except for that just complete butt kicking Florida State gave, you know, what's Alabama right now? Second, third, fourth, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, well, if that you just don't count the best wins that they have over the best teams in the SEC, sure, I guess there's no great wins for the ACC, but you got to count it. It happened. It's amazing.
And might go down is one of the great anomalies of all time, right up there. We've mentioned it before with the Hokies beating Ohio State in 2014.
We were driving to the game in Atlanta, the South Carolina game that weekend, which was obviously the day after the Alabama-Florida State game. And we're listening to Roy Philpott's show in Greenville, I believe, driving to the stadium, actually on the way to the MARTA. But so we're listening to this radio show, and they're talking about SEC football, and they're like, this guy from Birmingham calls in, of course, and he's like, well, you know, now that Alabama's a non-factor in the SEC, who's going to win the league this year? Alabama's looked unstoppable since that Florida State game. I would not have called them a non-factor after 1 week of the season because they had figured it out. But go ahead, David. Sorry.
No, that's hilarious. Also, cool that game day is going to Pitt. I think first time in like 20 years.
Yes.
That's pretty neat. Question about North Carolina for you guys. North Carolina's 4-5, and it has Wake on the road, Duke at home, and NC State on the road to end the season. Does North Carolina make a bowl game?
It's not out of the realm.
They've been playing.
They've won
well
back to back. They beat Syracuse on the road and then beat Stanford.
Here's the thing about them is we all just danced on the grave of Belichick because it was fun, right? I mean, they're getting just stomped earlier in the year. It's not even close. Such a disaster. Oh, his girlfriend's running the show and all this stuff. We loved it. They're not a bad team. They've got a really good defense. I haven't seen Teel's seen them in person, so a couple times. One of those times the defense played well recently against Virginia. But I mean, their record right now, they are 4-5. They were an inch away from beating Cal on the road. They were an inch away. I'm like literally an inch. I'm not just making up, very close to beating them, like an inch away from stretching the ball out. I don't think it's maybe nearly a disaster as everybody's made it out. I don't think it's a great situation. I think the roster has a lot of holes and stuff like that, but they're probably better than perhaps we'd given them credit for.
I think they're probably better. I still don't think they're going to get bowl eligible. I think they're going to drop 2 of the 3.
They're still hoping the Giants call Belichick. They're still hoping. They're still hoping.
Yeah.
Here's the question though: like, who feels confident? Who do you feel confident in picking in that NC State North Carolina game?
The Pack.
I would pick.
I would feel confident in neither team because whoever is going to be favored in that, there's no way you would be like, they're going to win because they're the favorite. The underdog feels like they always win that game, and both coaches are really under fire. Like, I don't know. That's one that just I can't even wrap my brain around picking that game right now.
Dave Dorn is going to have a cigar and a red Solo cup ready for post game that night.
I agree.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Especially considering
you're putting expectations on NC State, though. That always ends in heartbreak.
No, it's going to be because all the media at ACC football kickoff in Charlotte in August, completely ditched him, left his press conference to go follow Bill Belichick into the breakout room. Nobody was there to ask him questions. I guarantee you he brings that up.
Yep. Red Solo Cup and bulletin board material. Let's step aside and come right back. We'll hear from our presenting sponsor, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, a group of State Farm agents that support TechSideline.com can switch you over to State Farm so you can start saving today. These State Farm agents and their team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. Check out Tech Sideline for the agent in your area. It's easy to switch and save. Just give them a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And a big thanks to our presenting sponsor, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Let's get to basketball. Neoklis Avdalas, I feel like 2 games into Virginia Tech season, the world already kind of knows about him. And I think we thought we were going to get there at some point this season. But 2 games into the year, you beat Providence in overtime up at Mohegan Sun, and everybody's like, how did this kid get to Virginia Tech? What were your thoughts on Saturday's win over the Friars, Teel? And I guess just kind of what do you make of Neoklis Avdalas' start to his collegiate career?
Well, he's got 40, correct me if I'm wrong, David, 41 or 42 points and 15 assists.
Yeah,
41. Through 2 games. Quite a start, and really, not that unexpected. I mean, we've been told that this guy is a pro. He is a 6'8", 6'9" point guard with playmaking ability. He can score it. And as I've mentioned to you guys before, Will Wade told me in Charlotte at the ACC tip-off that he is, quote, great, unquote. And he talked about some of the other internationals coming into the league as good, and we've seen others really thrive. Testa Ritter at UVA, and then last night his first career start, Luka Bogovic for Carolina had more than 20 points against Radford. These international pros are going to going to leave a lasting imprint on this league this season and in future years. And it's just a reflection of the new world in which we live. I mean, these guys have played pro ball over in Europe. They are very skilled. And as Mike Young has told us, they have been exceptionally well coached. And fundamentally, they are very sound. They may not be as athletic and high flying as some of the younger athletes here in the States. But man, they know how to play.
This is going to be sacrilege because it's been like 1 game. But, I'm kind of a casual basketball fan, especially this time of year. But that was sort of the first time I saw him play. And I can't imagine he's going to go 5 for 8 from 3-point land in every game that he plays. But I feel like he'll be a distributor. He can handle the ball and kind of look Luka-esque at times. I mean, this will sound stupid when he has a bad game and somebody will throw it back in her face like, oh, how's Luka doing this time? But man, he feels like he has those kind of skills, and some of the step back shots he was hitting, the facilitating he was doing with the ball. I mean, it feels like Virginia Tech has a dude in this player.
Oh, Andy, they're about to have the 3rd first-round draft pick in program history, and I think it'll be this year's draft. And as David knows and has written as well as I have, because Carter kind of framed it, how did Neoklis Avdalas get to Virginia Tech? It's all about connections, and it's all about Chester Fraser having a relationship with Avdalas's agent, who happens to be Giannis's agent, who also happens to be the agent of Rudy Gay, who's Chester Fraser's buddy from their youth in Baltimore. Right, David?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I think it's funny, everybody wondering, like, how in the world, I've seen all those social media, like, how did Virginia Tech get this guy?
Yeah, somebody was like, can Kentucky take him right now?
It's funny because I think Virginia Tech was one of the only teams left in June when Avdalas kind of was going through the final stages of his process. Virginia Tech was one of the only teams that had its entire roster open was essentially saying, we will make our entire team around you. And you've seen what he's done through 2 games. I think he got off to a little bit of a slow start. He was like 3 for 13 in the opener. But some of the passes he's made, I mean, he's made a couple, 2, 3, 4 skip passes where he's throwing it to the complete other side of the court. And it's like, how did you know that guy was going to A, be there, and B, be open? But he's made it look very smooth. And I thought it came very easy to him, the scoring in that Providence game. And he's made all of his teammates around him better. Didn't feel like he tried to do too much. And I'm very excited to cover him. He's going to be really fun to watch as the season goes along. And Teel, where do you feel like he ranks among some of the league's freshmen this year, and also some of the guys you've seen come in and have immediate impacts in this league, in the last 20 years?
Well, David, we've seen some freshmen already have some breakout games. I mean, Caleb Wilson at North Carolina in the second half against Kansas. Well, the entire game against Kansas. Gracious, he was great. And Mikael Brown last night for Louisville against Kentucky. Obviously Cam Boozer at Duke, but Avdalas, he's older, man, and he has a whole lot more experience than those guys. And Mike Young's got to be pinching himself. Here's a guy who's been excellent in offense for decades, like few others, and now he has a unicorn that he can play with and deploy in so many different ways. It's probably a case of, all right, I've got to figure out exactly how to do this and not ask too much of him and not put too much on his plate, because he provides you with so many options on that end of the floor.
What are your thoughts on the ACC as a whole in basketball this year? I think clearly the national perception early on is it is much improved. We saw Wake Forest play a tight one with Michigan last night in Detroit. Louisville takes down Kentucky in a game where they pretty much led, start to finish for the most part. They were up 15 with about 5 minutes left, and then lead kind of dwindled down. But Louisville, big win over Kentucky. Obviously, Virginia Tech looks good. Syracuse is a whole lot more talented. I think some people like Miami. Duke obviously looks still like the Blue Devils that we typically are used to seeing. Florida State obviously plays a tight one with Florida yesterday, but Florida State was picked towards the bottom half of the league. So what do you make of the ACC right now in basketball? And do you think it's really as much improved as some make it out to be?
I think it could be, Carter, and I think the early returns are encouraging. Virginia Tech over Providence, North Carolina over Kansas, Duke over Texas, Louisville last night over Kentucky. Everybody will focus, and rightfully so, on the ACC-SEC challenge because it was such an abject disaster for the ACC last season to go 2-14, and you just don't recover from that. And it was just the previous year when I believe it was 8-8, and it ended in a tie. So somewhere in that range would be a whole lot better for the league, and I think it's capable of getting there. With the exception of Boston College, which clearly we saw again last night has myriad issues, and I don't know what to say about the Eagles on so many different levels.
In so many different sports, too.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I mean, not just men's basketball. I mean, what's up, Trevor?
Yes.
It was a great rant from Bill O'Brien. It almost reminded me of the Corey Moore, rant at the Sugar Bowl. Hey, Nappy. It was just so good. But I obviously will know a lot more. I think Virginia's much improved, guys. And the early schedule for the Cavaliers has been uninspiring to say the least. But they are going to score a whole lot of points. And folks in Charlottesville are just going to have to get accustomed to a whole brand new style of basketball under Ryan Odom. And they've got some bigs, and they've got some guards who can get up and down the floor. So, and we haven't even mentioned NC State. Will Wade has guys, including the best player in the Big 12 from last season. So they're going to be a factor in all this. So we'll see how deep the league can go, but clearly not going to be a 4-bid conference as it was last season.
Something tells me UVA fans will be okay with the new style.
Yeah.
Oh, get to score points and have an entertaining brand of basketball. Like, I know winning, you love to win like that, but sometimes I feel like that could be a frustrating team to watch when they weren't doing so well and they weren't scoring points like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Last season, which was such a slog, not only for the team and the program with an interim coach, but for the fans. And they've had a couple, shot clock violations on defense where the folks at JPJ get riled up. They haven't forgotten how to cheer defense now. But they are going to come to appreciate Ryan Odom and his offense very quickly. David, the Hokies are going to go to the Bahamas undefeated, right?
I believe so. I mean, they've got St. Joe's tonight, which I think will be an interesting test. But, of course, St. Joe's lost Billy Lang.
Steve Donahue's now their interim, former Boston College head coach.
Former Boston College coach.
Yeah, they lost Billy Lang to the Knicks right before the season. And this is a team that blew out the Hokies by 20 last year, which tells you exactly where Virginia Tech was. I expect them to go down to the Bahamas where they'll play Colorado State. Potentially a matchup with like St. Mary's, which I think would be really, really cool. So I think they're on a good track right now. Virginia, of course, put up 91 on Hampton last night, which I think probably had people in Charlottesville confused, going, I'd never seen score in the 90s before. I tell you what, I was very impressed with Louisville last night, like extremely impressed. And it looked a little dicey there down the stretch, but man, between Conwell, Isaac McNeely, of course, is in Louisville now too. They've got Pat Kelsey's just assembled so much talent, and also I thought it was really neat yesterday. Duke on Veterans Day went and played at Army and honored Coach K. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and John Shire has talked a lot about that game and how they did it to honor our nation's military and veterans, but especially to honor Mike Krzyzewski. Because if there are two institutions that define Coach K, that's the United States Military Academy and Duke University. And to have them play at West Point, such a hallowed place. Anyone who's been to any of the service academies, be they at Colorado Springs, Annapolis, or West Point, and I've been blessed to be at all three. It is a moving experience, and what those young people do for our country is beyond description. And to see them compete on the playing fields is really cool.
I'm also really curious to see Carolina, because I was not high on the Tar Heels coming into the season. But they beat Kansas week 1. I think they gave up 70-plus points to Radford last night.
74.
74 points. But, I mean, long-term, that should be okay. Hubert Davis, obviously, very, very key year for him in Chapel Hill. But I think Carolina is the pieces, obviously, to be very, very good once again, too. So if the ACC can get – I think I saw Jeff Goodman talking about this yesterday. If it gets to the point in this season where Carolina, Duke, and NC State are all flirting with the top 10, like that is dream scenario for the ACC. And I really don't think it's that far-fetched.
No, Carter. And you throw Louisville in there too, because they're such another, obviously not in the triangle, but an immense basketball brand. And I would argue a bigger basketball brand than NC State. But I think the concern at Carolina, and you mentioned how many points Radford scored last night. Losing Seth Trimble indefinitely to this injury, his arm, I believe it is, and he had to have some surgery. That is a real blow to North Carolina defensively. He is one of the best on-ball defenders in the conference. So I think that's something to watch moving forward. But offensively, the Tar Heels have no issues.
Yeah, I think that sounded like some weird freak accident, like
in
the weight room, like a broken arm, and because of a weight equipment, something fell on his arm. That's just very sad. And the other, I think the program that nobody's mentioned is Clemson. It looks like Brad Bretnell's got a pretty solid squad again, and he's the longest tenured coach in the league.
No, Brad's great. Whenever I see him, he puts his arm around me and he says, "It's just you and me, man.
Yeah.
We're the two old men of the league," and he's right.
Well, Teel, as always, really appreciate your time. Always a ton to talk about. Hopefully there's a little bit of shelf life on this podcast. I do think there will be.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be something. Hey, maybe if something breaks, we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. So appreciate your time as always. Look forward to chatting next week, and enjoy your trip to Charlottesville this weekend.
Durham.
Durham. Virginia Duke at
Duke.
Wallace Wade Stadium. Yeah. Well, enjoy your trip to Durham.
Yeah, I got a game tomorrow night too. Got Troy at Old Dominion, 2 6-3 Sun Belt team. So it'll be a busy football weekend. Looking forward to it.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, for the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel, for David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from Blacksburg. And from this edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm, we'll talk to you very soon.